We really appreciate all of you attending. I want to commend Dr. Stark, who is really strengthening the relationships that we have across the Commonwealth with schools and districts. And again, we are so appreciative of her efforts as we move forward in collaborating and in sharing areas that may be of interest to you. So, Dr. Stark.
Hey, thank you everyone for being here. And again, it's a big thank you to you, Dr. Lingo, for your leadership in providing me the opportunity to be able to bring these presentations to not only to the Louisville faculty, but also to the community at large, to strengthen our relationships with our partners across the state as well. And today we're going to have Shannon Putman, and she's going to be speaking about immersive virtual reality. And right now, that is the wave of the future. That's where we are going as a country, but it has not exploded as we know it's going to be. And we've had the opportunity and to, I guess, to be fortunate to have Shannon that has been working on this for the last 2 years. And when we have someone that's working in that area, then it is very, very important that we take advantage of that opportunity, and that even as the state of Kentucky, that we're on the forefront, of the technologies that's going to happen in the future, and not bringing up the rear, but we have an opportunity to be on the forefront. So I just want to make sure that we're able to share this information with the university faculty, but also to the community at large, to see how can we embrace this technology that's going to change the way we teach, the way we think. And it is indeed an opportunity, and also not only in education, but also in the workplace as well, because it can save many, many dollars in terms of individuals getting that rich experience firsthand. So again, welcome. We thank you for being here this morning. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon, who has an amazing presentation on immersive virtual reality. Do not change the way your students learn, but change the way you teach. This is an opportunity to put some tools in your toolkit to advance education experiences throughout the state of Kentucky. Welcome, Shannon.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Stark. Those are wonderful words. I hope to live up to them. So thank you very much. As Dr. Stark said, virtual reality is a tool in your toolkit. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to kind of introduce you to it, give you a little background about what we've been doing here at U of L and in JCPS, and kind of show you some ways that you can get involved with virtual reality. And no matter what your classroom is, virtual reality is applicable to you. Learning is learning, education is education. The subject matter isn't really important. It can be the athletic field, it could be the battlefield, it could be the operating room. Virtual reality is making an impact in all of these areas. So that's something I wanted to make sure that everybody is understanding, that if you think this doesn't apply to you, it absolutely does. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and go through my presentation. And if anybody has any questions, you can absolutely feel free to put them in the chat. We will be checking that, and let me put the slideshow up so you can see that. Okay, so like I said, I'm just going to be taking you through what it is and how you can use it. And this right here are some of my wonderful students from Cochran Elementary at 500 West Galbert. I taught there for 13 years. 11 of them were in special education. And that's what really got me started utilizing technology and looking to what other options were out there for my students that couldn't access, the material and other things the way that your typical student could. And the reason that virtual reality is making such an impact and is so effective is because we only retain 10% of what we read, 30% of what we see, but 80% of what we experience. And in education, we're always talking about creating experiences for our students. We want them to connect to the material. We want them to have authentic engagement, and virtual reality creates that. So what is it? I'm going to give you kind of just a basic definition of what it is so you can understand how we're using it and what the technology is. There are multiple different definitions, but I like Eden and Beezer because it says that immersive virtual reality is the ability to immerse the user in a virtual world with the use of a head-mounted display or sensing glove or controller aimed at capturing the user's input in real time. The reason I like this definition is because, one, it has the component of the head-mounted display, HMD, or typically a lot of people refer to it as a headset. So that's okay. The technical term is HMD, but it's okay to say headset. And also the user's input in real time. That's another critical component of immersive virtual reality. And that I is important, as you'll learn when we go through. So that means that I'm not just a passive observer in the virtual environment, I'm actually an active participant. So if I want to pick up an object, if I want to throw a ball, I can do all that in real time in immersive virtual reality. And that interaction takes us, like I said, from being passive and just watching, which students tend to get bored with after the novelty wears off, to being that full participant and keeping their attention and always keeping them engaged. And there's two types. Like I said, I'm going to mostly focus on immersive, but I also wanted to talk about the computer-based non-immersive because it will allow us some good options to kind of get that gateway into fully immersive virtual reality. So computer-based non-immersive is, if anybody has ever heard of Second Life, that's a big one in special ed. It's where you actually can create an avatar, kind of like The Sims as well, if you know any of those games. You can navigate the virtual world utilizing a mouse or a keyboard, and you have a virtual representation, but you're never completely in that world. I can still see my desk, I can see my computer, everything else is all around me. Whereas immersive virtual reality, and how we're using the definition, is where you're actually in the virtual environment. You put that headset on and I cannot see anything around me except for what the headset is showing me. And if I wanted to raise my hand, I would have to have a virtual representation of my hand. I couldn't see my own body. And so those are two kind of key features for the difference of the virtual reality. And so there's different forms, and then there's kind of different levels. The first level is the mobile VR, which a lot of people in education remember as Google Expeditions and Google Cardboard. It's where you put your cell phone in a piece of cardboard, and it really was fantastic for what it did. It was wonderful, got VR kind of going, but I compare it to a flip phone where it was awesome, but we're on the smartphones now. And the standalone is the current, what I would consider smartphone. So what we're using is the HTC Vive Focus Plus that you see here. And they say standalone because it literally is, you take it out of the box and you're good to go. You don't have to put a cell phone in it. You don't have to connect it to a computer, which would be your highest tier of VR. There's computer-based, which brings a lot more features, a lot more graphics, also a higher price tag. So the standalone, you just take out, and you can see it has two controllers, and those controllers allow you to interact with that virtual environment. And there's some buzz terms kind of in the industry: 3 degrees of freedom, 6 degrees of freedom. Basically, these are 6 degrees of freedom. So basically that just means you can move across all planes in the virtual environment. So if I want to turn or rotate or move or pick things up, I can do that just like I could in my natural world. It also, if you see on the front, there is a dual facing camera, which is incredibly exciting as well, because that allows us to bring in augmented reality, which could be a whole nother presentation. I won't overwhelm you with it, but what that means is if I have that headset on and I want to see the world around me, my real world, typically you would have to take your headset off. Well, with the dual facing camera, I just tap that power button twice and it activates that camera, and now I can see everything around me and see my real world without having to take off my headset. So like I said, that opens up opportunities for augmented reality and all the things that come with that. So there's an app called Flood My Room where you can turn that camera on and you actually see your room flooding. And so it gives us a whole nother realm of exciting opportunities. So now that you kind of have your little background of VR, I'm going to go ahead and show you what we've been doing. and how we've kind of had to shift because of COVID, but still continue to do our work, and just how you can actually use it in your classroom and like real life examples. So as you can see here, we have an entire class of students. This is at Portland Elementary, and they are engaged. It was so exciting. And you see we're on stools. We try to have stools if possible, because it is a 360-degree experience that allows the student to freely move in all directions and not be limited by any type of furniture. It's not a necessity. It's just something I kind of like to point out to people, little things to think of. So here at the university level, we actually started working with pre-service teachers. And it was right kind of as COVID hit, and we made that switch to all virtual, and everybody was kind of scrambling. And HTC had contacted me and said, you know, we have this collaboration platform. Is there any way that you could, you know, use it? And so I talked to Dr. Finch, who whenever I come to him, I'm like, I've got an idea. He could get a little nervous, understandably, but he jumped in with both feet, and he was like, let's do it. So what we did was we delivered safely headsets to all students in his teaching writing methods class. And so their last class of the semester, we conducted it in virtual reality. And so I'm going to show you here, what they did was they made us our own virtual environment for the University of Louisville. And so for the first half of the class, it was Dr. Finch teaching the class just like he normally would. So you can see he has his screen, he had his slideshow presentation. Everybody has full body virtual avatar representation. Dr. Finch is, you can, in the top right, you see he's got a laser pointer. So he's got all these features, and he was able to teach his class, like I said, how we would in the real world, but have some other features and exciting things. And so then the second half of the class, and this is where virtual reality really sets itself apart. One of his students, Morgan, she was able to teach a lesson. So when COVID hit, she, you know, and we had to close schools down for in-person learning, she lost out, the whole class lost out on the opportunity to teach a lesson to students. And we know as method students, that's a key component, is getting that real life teaching experience. Because you can talk about it all day, but until you get out there and do it, it doesn't matter. So what Morgan did was she actually taught her lesson just like she would have if she had been with her third grade class that she had been placed with. So she got real life teaching experience with the virtual reality that she would have completely missed out on. So she was able to get real-time feedback from not only her professor, but from other students in the class. And she got to bring in features that she could never do in the classroom. So the lesson involved utilizing the 5 senses and key details, you know, so sight, sound, touch, taste. And the book she used was about 2 lion cubs. So in that upper left picture, you can see we brought in a fully animated life-size lion cub, and it ran across the screen. It scared people and across the room, excuse me. And it was an attention grabber. It made that connection and that emotional piece that we want for that authentic engagement. People still remember, like I remember when that lion cub came out, and people will be like, well, you can show a YouTube video of a lion. Yes, you absolutely can, but I'm telling you right now, it is not the same, and it does not have the same impact. So we were able to do things that we could never do in the real world. And those are some of those tools that virtual reality gives us beyond just the typical meeting. Because you can say, well, we can meet on Zoom. Yes, and they've already proven that Zoom fatigue is a real thing, and it's happening. So we need to find something else, something better. And this is that next progression in that process. And one other thing that happened, which was unexpected, and I know Dr. Finch, I hope you wouldn't mind me telling the story. He had students share out their writing. And another key feature was when they were in this room, they had to take notes, but they got to actually just talk and it would dictate it. So now if you have students that aren't good at typing, that can't write, it does dictation and takes notes and gives you a printout of it. So that is giving more access for students right there, or even younger students. and I just try to kind of, I know I throw a lot of information, but I try to pop in key features when I think of it. And so there was a student who was reluctant to share her poem, and we finally convinced her, and it just so happened that as she was going to start, somebody had joined in the room and had made a comment that sounded like it was about the girl who was presenting, and it wasn't, but it was upsetting. And so she's like, well, I don't want to share anymore. So she was very upset. So Dr. Finch was actually his avatar was able to go over to her avatar on like the side of the room, and he actually got down like right with her on eye level and was able to privately talk to her and comfort her in a way that you could never do with Zoom. It was a private conversation that had an emotional connection that could have only happened through virtual reality. And she ended up coming back and sharing her poem. And so it was pretty impactful. And he said after that moment, he was sold. And he's continued to use virtual reality and moving in his classroom, and he's a lifetime user now. And he's self-admittedly not the highest in tech savvy, and he was able to pick it up and teach in the virtual environment after about 2 training sessions. So it's not hard for people to learn. So if you say, the old dog can't learn new tricks, yes, they absolutely can. Not that he's old, I'm not saying that in any way at all, just using that quote. But the work that we did with that class was actually so new and so groundbreaking that HTC is bragging about it, basically. So U of L has gone international, and they talk about it in China and other Asian countries, because HTC is based out of China. And so you can see students in the classroom, and then they were actually in the stores and things like that. They have clips of U of L, and they're talking about how we are utilizing this technology like nobody else. So a little clout chasing for us there. And again, here again at U of L, we utilized VR, immersive virtual reality, for the social studies methods class. There's an experience here called My Brother's Keeper from PBS, and it puts you right in the middle of the Civil War. And it is a 360-degree movie. And that's a difference too in the environments. So with the previous, you saw that it's all computer generated images. So it's like CGI is the environment. Whereas My Brother's Keeper utilized 360 video. So now you're actually seeing real video as opposed to a computer generated image. So there's pros and cons to both types. With the 360 video, it does not allow you to interact because it's a video. So that does take that part away from it, but it can also increase the realism and the presence and the immersion in the virtual reality. So students experienced My Brother's Keeper, and you can also see too, Dr. Finch did, and that led to so many rich conversations. And I did this at Cochrane with our 5th grade students, and it was one of the most fantastic lessons, and students still talk about it and they still remember it because it was so impactful. And we talked about how when a cannonball goes off, typically in movies and things like that, it makes this big explosion. And we talked about how a cannonball doesn't actually explode. The point of the cannonball, into this picture, here it is. The point of a cannonball is to actually cause damage. So that led us to talk about troop formation. And if you know this cannonball is going to come through, if you have your troops lined up in a row straight behind each other, is that going to be effective? Or should you stagger them? So we had the students actually decide how they were going to line up to be more effective. And I had a basketball, and it was fun because you actually get to roll a ball at kids. So you can kind of whip it at them, kidding. And then that led to talking about trajectory and angles and speed and velocity. So when I say that VR is applicable to everything, I mean, it really is. It's just how you think about using the technology. There's so much cross-disciplinary information that you can get and you can study from just one experience. Go back. So that was how we've continued using it at U of L. And I said that we've been altered by COVID, but we haven't been deterred. So this is teachers at Portland. We actually got to I went and did a training with them, and they took the headsets home. So now the teachers are becoming proficient users, and they're creating lessons for when we come back to in-person learning. So that was something we would have not had time for, and that's a big piece of technology integration and what goes into those decisions on if we're going to use technology in our classroom or not. Let's face it, as teachers, as educators, we know if we turn it on and it doesn't work, we probably aren't going to come back to it, or if I have to do multiple steps. I kind of call it the smartboard effect, because when smartboard came out, it was awesome, and it had so many features and so many things you could do with it that teachers just got overwhelmed, and it basically became a giant projection screen. And so we are trying to make sure we take coordinated, specific steps so that that does not happen with these headsets, because they're way too powerful of a tool to allow that to happen. So teachers have been using those headsets, like I said, creating those lessons and becoming proficient users. So the moment we come back into the classroom, they're ready to go. And that's something really exciting that I'm glad that they wanted to take advantage of that. And a lot of times when you go to conferences and you hear about all this stuff, and it's like, okay, yeah, but how can I actually use it in my classroom? Like, you're showing me things, but I don't really get how I can use it in my instruction. And what I want you to understand with virtual reality is that it's not a replacement. Yes, we can have classes in VR and we can conduct lessons in there as part of it, but I'm not saying you're going to be in VR for 8 hours a day and only do meetings in VR and only have class in VR. That's not it at all. That's an option. And you're not going to have students in headsets for hours a day. It's a tool that we can use to enhance instruction. It's not a replacement, because a lot of people get nervous about that. It's definitely not. But it's such a powerful tool that when you actually see it, you're going to want to use it. So I had a second grade teacher ask me, hey, we're working on money. Do you have anything dealing with money? I'm like, well, let me see. There's no app in VR that says, let's teach money, because that's what everybody always wants too with technology. Well, is there an app? Is there an app? Is there an app? There doesn't have to be an app. Just change the way you think. We always need to continue to make more apps, yes, but we already have what we need if we just switch our thinking and use it. And so I was like, well, let me see. No, there wasn't that app. So I found a fishing game. It's called Bait. And you can see it, and it's an actual fishing game. So with the controller, the student actually gets to cast the line out. And when the fish bites on the hook, they have to, squeeze the trigger and reel it in. But if they just hold the trigger down, the line will snap, just like real life consequences. And so they got to get in there. So every student came in, and I just whipped up an Excel sheet, and I said, all right, guys, you guys are going to get to play. You're playing a game. And they're like, what? I'm like, yep. So every student for about 20 minutes just got to play, and they got to fish. And so every time they caught a fish, as you can see, it gave them, 1, 2, or 3 stars, told them the name, the weight, and how many coins they got. And so every time they caught a fish, they had to record it on the Excel sheet. So after about 20 minutes, they took the headsets off, which is good because that's a good amount of time, and it gives you a nice break, gives your eyes, your body, your head a good break. And they had to add up the total of everything. So right there's got your math already starting, and that opened up conversations. So what we did was we talked about estimation, like, okay, this tangerine tang got you 1 star and it weighed 0.68. How heavy do you think it would need to be to earn 3 stars? And so then we estimated and we talked about that. And this is the reason I give this experience, is because this lesson took a turn that I never could have anticipated, including, and I feel like I'm a pretty bomb teacher, and I never would have predicted or planned what happened in this lesson. And so then I was talking and I said, what did you do if you couldn't find the fish? And a girl said, well, I cast into the deeper water. And I said, well, why did you go in the deeper water? She says, that's where the bigger fish are. Well, why are the bigger fish in the deeper water? Another kid said, well, because it's colder. Oh, okay, so now I see where we're going. Okay, well, why is it colder? Because the sun doesn't reach it. And boom, all of a sudden we had this rich, unbelievable conversation about the environment and science that I never would have thought of. And I kind of was just like flabbergasted, and I just went with it. That's part of what VR does. It allows the kids to drive the conversation forward. So instead of me teaching and talking to them, they were talking to me and driving it. And also in the game, you can catch like a can, an aluminum can and stuff. And so we talked about, cleaning up the environment. And so then students we brought in art because they had to either draw their favorite fish or create their own fish that they would like to see in the game. So after we had that conversation and, about 20, again, it was about 20 minutes, I let them go back in the game because they earned these coins that whole time and they got to spend them in the game. So now we're having real life experience that's meaningful to them because guess what? They cared about that game. They were excited about that game. They wanted to spend that money. And so it was like, okay, well, you have 300 coins. Are you going to save it and keep fishing because you want to buy the new reel? Or are you going to spend it on the bait and use that to try to get more fish? And it had real life consequences and real meaning that they cared about. And, people like to dismiss games and whatever, but kids care. And it was important and they loved it. And so not only did they learn the entire time, they had fun. I had fun with them. We got to play. I got to be a kid and enjoy it with them. And the other thing that happened when we got done, the teacher said to me, she said, "You didn't have any behavior problems." I said, "Yeah, I know." And she's like, "No, like you didn't have any." I said, "I know. And let me tell you, this was a class I probably wouldn't have signed up for if I had my choice." I said, "I know," because they were having fun, they were engaged, and they loved what they were doing. And there's students in that class that weren't allowed to stand next to each other in line, and they were talking to each other throughout this experience. They weren't best friends. It wasn't heal the world. I mean, it didn't mend all these fences, but during that hour lesson, there was no fighting. They didn't care. All that went out the window. It was like, "Oh, you caught that fish? Well, I got this one. Look at this." And so as teachers, we worry that VR can be very isolating because students put that headset on and they're like, "Oh, well, they're in their own world." And I found it to be the exact opposite. Kids are more engaged, they talk to each other more, they share more, and they have less reservations. So I really like to highlight that example because it's a real life thing that you can utilize in your classroom. And I know I sound like a snake oil salesman, but my snake oil works. So that's what I always say, because it's like I feel like I'm selling a dream, but your dream could be a reality, a virtual reality. Oh, pun intended. So just another example, the Apollo 11 experience is literally you get to go into outer space, which is exciting. So I had the students Google outer space, and then I had them actually go into outer space on the Apollo 11 mission. And then they had to write about it. And so I kind of just took some informal research. And when they used the internet to research space, the sentences were about 3 to 4 words. And they had about 3 sentences. However, when they actually got to go into outer space, that increased to 8 words and 6 sentences. And 96% of the students would prefer, they're supposed to say would prefer to use the VR. It says internet, but that's a typo. So again, that's another simple way that you can utilize what you have. And you can do that with one headset. So I always like to show ways that you can either jerry rig or make things work with just limited capacity, because I know obviously in a dream world, we could all buy these headsets and it'd be great, but that's not how it really is. So you can utilize the tools that I'm showing you with just one headset or not even a headset, which you'll find out in a little bit. I kept this one in here too, just because it was kind of relevant to what was happening. My American Experience, we actually went into the Capitol Rotunda in social studies, and we saw the paintings and everything that is in that Capitol Rotunda that was just stormed. And so our students were actually there before that happened. And so I actually had a student reach out to me and say, "Ms. Putman, wasn't that where we went?" And that was 2 years ago. So if you think it doesn't make lifelong connections for lifelong learning, it absolutely does. And they're like, "Yep," because one of them actually recognized the painting because we had specifically talked about Columbus's landing, because that was there. We're talking about Columbus. And again, Capitol Rotunda and Columbus, how are they really going to connect? And they did, because the students got to actually see and experience that painting. And then we analyzed the painting and took it from there. Another big area of virtual reality is empathy. So I don't want to throw a lot of research at you, because I know people their eyes tend to glass over, but the research is there to support it. So VR has been proven multiple times to be incredibly effective for teaching empathy. And that's something we're always striving for with our students. We say, walk a mile in my shoes, but unless we're really going to, strap them on, it's hard to actually do that and to create that for kids. So My New Home is a fantastic experience where students actually start out fleeing their house in the middle of the night, and they end up in an African refugee camp, and they learn all about it and how they have to trade soap for food, how they don't know if they're ever going to see their family again. And so what that did was that showed our kids, and we know our kids have it rough. A lot of them have it real hard, but somebody always has it harder. And yet, how are we going to respond to that? Are we going to keep working? Are we going to shut down? How can we work towards helping others while helping ourselves? And that's what My New Home did. Similar with Notes on Blindness, that experience actually allowed you, it's audio recordings of a gentleman who was losing his sight and he went blind. And so you're listening to it, and that's how he described his vision and how when it started to fade, what it looked like. So you are now having your vision taken away. And he talks about being in the park and hearing the leaves crunch and people walking behind him, but not being able to see it. And that one was incredibly powerful, not just for our kids, but for our adults. Because a lot of times we think, oh, well, visually impaired kids, give them a cane and a dog, whatever, they're fine. But no, it's so much more than that. Everything is so much, it has such a different level of challenge to it. So now we get to take those teachers and have them see, all right, here it is. Now you navigate the classroom. And so creating empathy with adults, which we want to get them young and we want to start them as kids. Absolutely. But sometimes we know that even adults need a little check-in on that empathy piece. And a very relevant for what is happening now is it's called 1,000 Cuts, and that's that image from the left. And what that does is that actually allows you to embody the life of an African-American male and experience firsthand the racism that he experiences in different situations. And it's incredibly powerful. And that's one thing we do want to make sure with virtual reality, because it does have such a powerful component to it, that we always want to be careful on what we pick and what we choose, just like in any other medium. But it's a fantastic experience that, like I said, is timely, and it helps open up those conversations that a lot of teachers are reluctant to have because they're hard. They're hard conversations. Talking about race, especially now in America, is a very hard conversation. However, it's what we need to do. It's what we need to have. It's what's going to start our curriculum shift and actually allow us to make those changes that we're hoping to make. And on that same empathy piece, and I'll give this PowerPoint, will be available afterwards, so you can watch it, watch things afterward and have all the resources. But what we did was we actually made an anti-bullying video, and the students wanted to do it because they're like, it's really tough being a student in 2019 with social media and everything else. And so what we did was we set the camera up, and they actually bullied the camera. So when you put the headset on and you experience this video, you're the one being bullied now. And so they had me, let me see if I can do it a little bit. No, they had me do it as well, because we think that bullying is just peer-to-peer, but despite the best of intentions, teachers sometimes do as well.
Did you not get your homework done again? That is 3 days this week and you haven't gotten your homework done. Are you really that stupid that you can't do your homework?
Now, I have never ever said that to a student. I would just like to point that out. That is not me. That's what they wanted me to say. And so a lot of times I know, and I'm not perfect by any means, but as teachers, not only what we say, but how we say it, and then the way we say it. Because you see, I moved towards them. I had my body language was just disgusted, basically, that they didn't get their homework done, not knowing why and not caring why, quite frankly. And if you what's very important to notice is if you look to the left of me, there's other students and another teacher in the classroom, and they all have their back turned. And at different points in the video, they either have their back turned or they're just sitting and staring. And so now that bystander effect of, hey, we see it happening, but nobody's doing anything about it. And I can actually look over at them and be like, are you going to help me? And nobody helps or does anything. And when the kids would yell at the camera, they would get really like, you are such a loser. And I was like, holy cow. And it ended up being so cathartic because when I said to them, I said, well, why did you pick those names? Why did you say, choose to call them those names? And they said, well, because that's what people call me. And it took my breath away. And I was like, oh man, that's what they're going through. And that's what these kids are dealing with. And so if we can allow others to feel that, we can start to make the change that we want to see. And that was student creation. So not only does virtual reality allow us to change how we teach and change how our kids learn, but it allows them to become creators in so many different ways. We talk about deeper learning. Deeper learning is in project-based learning. That's just quality instruction. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. It's quality instruction. And it takes the technology out of our hands, puts it into their hands. And it makes them the creators and us the observers and us now learning from them. And virtual reality does that in so many different ways. And I'm going to expand on that here. So one of the key pieces of software that we use with the virtual reality, and this is what would be a critical component, whether you're at the university level, using it with your students, on campus, whether you're, second grade, high school, whatever. It's called Engage, and we call it, Jack Bosley actually coined the term the Swiss Army knife of VR, and he's absolutely right. You can do anything you want with Engage. So if you see in the bottom left, you can actually put the human body together. So now when we're starting to talk about medical and everything else, there's so many different things. There's different locations we can go to. There's different things we can do. And it's the software I'm using for my dissertation project, which is actually creating a VR experience around the life of Representative John Lewis and the Bloody Sunday March on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. It takes you through his whole life, but that's one of the key pieces. And so you're going to actually be able to walk across the bridge, attempt to walk across the bridge like they did that day, utilizing Engage. So that's something exciting to look forward to. But a lot of people I know are probably sitting there like, my kids can't do this. I'm not gonna be able to do this. I teach second grade, I teach first grade, I'm not gonna be able to do it. Well, yes, you absolutely can. So two of my favorite people in the entire world, Jordan and Jalen Smith, who are just absolutely, I could just eat them up with a spoon. Miss Margot Smith is twin daughters. They actually presented at an international conference. So there's people from Dubai, China, everywhere in this conference, and they presented on how to use VR for education. They were in second grade. So I kind of want that to sink in. In second grade, they already have a line on their Vita that I never had. And they not only showed how we used it in education, but they taught adults how to bring in 3D elements. So they said, this is how you bring in a chicken. This is how you make it run across the room. Oh, you want to bring in this asset? Here you go. And they were second grade. Now, granted, they're amazing, but I'm not taking anything away from them. But that's what we were doing at Cochrane before COVID hit. We had students creating their own virtual worlds and their own virtual experiences and their own lessons. And so you really can do it with all of them. And the reason that I talk about Engage and I like to highlight it is because now, since that conference, Engage has just chugged forward at a wonderful speed, and you can use Engage now on any platform. So you can use it on your Chromebook, you can access it on your phone, your iPad, your computer. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, we don't have any headsets, that's okay. You don't need a headset to get started. The same experience that I'm making with John Lewis is going to be experienced on the headset and on the computer. And students can navigate, like I had mentioned before, using the mouse or the keyboard. They can navigate that virtual space. They can sit down at their Chromebook and make a virtual environment in a lesson at home, and other students can join them in it. So WebXR is kind of what that term really kind of is. It's under that umbrella, is how you introduce them to it, and you get that creation and that content creation and everything. And that's how you kind of reel them in, and then you work on getting headsets. It's also a great way for any students that either wouldn't have a permission slip or are just, nervous or are uncomfortable using the headset. Because the one thing about VR is that we never force it on any student. And that's a difference with other technology, because we force technology on these students. And I'm the biggest fan of tech. However, the map test that we take in JCPS, guess what? You don't get a paper option. You have to do it on the computer. And I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that. We're forcing screen time on students. And VR is not like that, because it is powerful and because there are, other things involved with it. We never force a headset on a child. So this also allows other students to be able to participate that might not want to put that headset on. You can also cast what's being done on the headset to a TV or a computer. So that's another way that they can still be involved in the experience without putting the headset on. But Engage is kind of that key that unlocks it all. And how do we actually keep safe? Well, that's a fantastic question. So before COVID, we opened up the first virtual reality lab in an elementary school in this Commonwealth of Kentucky at Cochran. And in the 2 years that we've been open, we've never had one instance of lice. We've never had one instance of pink eye. We've never had any problem, because we always took sanitation so important. We always had careful steps. We actually made it so that it was kind of a well-oiled machine, and that the students did the cleaning and the charging and everything. And we had it basically down to a science. And then COVID hit. And so understandably, people are very nervous about being like, well, I'm going to put this headset and it's right by my nose and mouth, which is where we know everything is spreading. And then somebody else is going to use it. Well, how can we do that? Luckily, there always seems to be something. CleanBox is the technology you're seeing here. It is UVC grade technology. So it's the same technology that they use, at the CDC, and it kills, N1 or SARS, COVID-19, all of that. So what we do is we take the headset, and this specific CleanBox is designed for a VR headset. So it's incredibly lightweight. I carry it with me. I take it on the go. I pop it in there, and it does a 1 minute cycle, and my headset comes out sanitized. So I can ensure the safety, which is a critical component. And I think we're going to see CleanBox in this type of technology in learning environments in general post-COVID, whether it's VR or not. We're just going to have to take better steps to be more careful. So we would not be able to do what we're doing without that CleanBox technology. And now, of course, we still wipe it down, things like that, because it doesn't remove sweat or anything like that. But they also have a nanotech spray that helps seal the headset for extra level of protection. So it's fabulous. And if you're interested in it all, I can hook you up with Kelly. She's amazing. And it gives you peace of mind, because it's what you need. So as I'm chugging along here, I would just want to show you a couple other little things that we're doing in JCPS that I wasn't able to share before, but hopefully I can now. So the Flame Trainer is a super exciting piece of technology. It is a firefighting simulation designed by an Australian professional firefighter. And as he states, it's not let's play firefighter, it's a serious training tool. So JCPS has 2 of these at Fairdale and Fern Creek, both fire science academies. because understandably, anyone under 18 is not allowed in any live fire experience. Also, we're seeing a dramatic decrease in the amount of live fire training that departments are allowed to do because of the environment, because of the expense, and because of just the coordination that it takes to get everybody together. So the flame trainer is the perfect option for that. And so what it is it actually, you start by putting on a vest, and this vest goes on under all the clothing, and it's a heat vest, and it heats up. So if the fire is behind you, the back of the vest is going to heat up. So you can actually feel the fire, which is something that is just invaluable. And then the other equipment that comes with it, the hose that you see there, you actually can set it to whatever your fire truck's hose capacity is, because they vary. The hose, the nozzle, and the handle are the exact same that you would see in behind Mark there. So they're the exact same that you would use on the truck. And you can adjust that nozzle for the spray. You can spray foam, you can spray water. And there's also a haptic sensor on the end of it. So when you pull that handle and you open it, it actually will push back to give you that feeling of that water pressure. And then there's a mask, and that mask, and this might be kind of the key point, besides the vest, I think the heat vest is the best, but that mask tracks your oxygen consumption through the entire experience. So you will know, okay, you set it again to your oxygen tank capacity, and you wear the system as a backpack. And so you have the weight of it as well. And it's like, okay, well, you would have used all your oxygen 20 minutes into the fire and you wouldn't have survived. And when I was talking to Mark here, something I didn't know was he talked about how extensive the breathing training is that they go through, because you have to teach yourself to breathe calmly through these fires. And I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. And we worked it out. And in 1 year, if you use the flame trainer for just breathing training, you can save $350,000 in oxygen tanks alone. So yes, you heard me, $350,000 savings in oxygen tanks alone. So think about that in every other aspect. That's a lot of money. And so I'm just going to play these two videos real quick for you so you can hear Mark talking about it and what he says, and then actually see it in action.
You put all that gear
From
on?
my experience, that's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
And the disorientation is completely realistic, because you can't see when you go into a room that's on fire and it's filled with smoke. So the feeling of being just a little disoriented, it's perfectly, that's an element that's
natural.
that's a completely natural. Yeah.
So when he talked about that disorientation, again, something I'd never thought of because I'm not a firefighter. And a lot of times when we initially put people in a VR headset, that's
Shannon,
what
can
happens.
you increase the volume?
I can try. Let me see, and then I'll show the second video real quick, because I know with time, and it doesn't have, you don't have to worry about the audio. So you can see on the screen behind him, he's actually fighting the fire. And so he's having the hose is connected to a real.
I love that. That is right there, that pull that I've got.
Uh-huh.
Am I okay?
Yep, you got about another step. Stop.
So you see he's actually getting down and having to get under for the fire. And he had mentioned the pull of the hose, and that was an aspect that is very important to the system as well. And he talked about how usually you have two people, and one person's main responsibility is managing the hose, and then the person in the front is the one fighting the fire. And he said that pulling is something that is so important, because the strength that it takes, the endurance that it takes, and you can't simulate that in any other way without this actual system. So now we're not only putting them right in the middle of the fire to find out how they'll react if they're scared, how they breathe, but also under the same conditions that they would be, which is so critical. They're exhausted, they're tired, their body aches, but they need to keep going. And so the flame trainer is something that we're incredibly excited about, and we can't wait to get going. And then this one is really important. I'm just kind of, as I'm summing up here, we have the amazing opportunity. I'm working with the Grace James Academy, and it is a wonderful experience. So this whole time that I've been watching my students in VR and using these headsets, there's something that's always bothered me. And that was that my students of color always had a hard time because of their hair. And what would happen is they would either have to hold the headset up to their face, which then means they can't be interactive, or we would have to try to manipulate the strap around their hair. It would hurt. It wouldn't fit properly. So now they're losing the quality experience, or it would mess up their hair. And I've had people say to me, oh, that's just vanity. And it's the exact opposite. It is the last thing from vanity. And these students, they would spend a lot of time getting their hair done. It was very important to them, as well it should be. And so it always bothered me. I'm like, there's got to be some other way that we can design these headsets, or some sort of strapping system or something that allows us to be able to have everybody use this headset. And it always bothered me. But with my glorious hair that I have, in all thin and that it is, I've never had that problem. So for me to try to design something would just be ridiculous. So what we're doing, and I'm so thrilled to be able to do this, is the girls at Grace James Academy actually have headsets right now. They're currently playing and learning and using the headsets. And what they're doing is they're actually designing either a different headset, a different system, or a different strapping system so that they can utilize it no matter what type of hairstyle they have. And our goal is to actually get this to 3D print it and bring it to actual completion, because it's that important. And they need to have that same access. I always talk about it with my special ed kids and being able to access the technology, and it's the same thing. We need to have this equitable access for everybody, because it's just what needs to be done. And so there's a problem, and so the girls are fixing it, and I cannot wait to share what they're coming up with, because it really is unbelievable. It's Black girl magic, and I'm just thrilled to be able to do that. So keep your eye out for that. It might be revolutionizing the whole industry. So that's basically, I have a lot more examples, a lot more things I can share, but I figured that was probably enough to kind of get your brains going. And you can contact me anytime. Follow me on Twitter. That's why I share a lot of my VR and get a lot of my VR information. But I follow about 2,500 technology accounts and then about 2,500 dog accounts. So you need to be a dog lover to come onto my Twitter. But otherwise, you can reach out to me anytime, and Dr. Stark, through the Nystrand Center, and that's kind of what that's my spiel. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Shannon. And we want to know if you all have any questions for Shannon at this time. So the floor is open. You can unmute yourself to ask a question, or you can pose a question in the chat box.
Shannon, we have a question from Greg Clark in the chat. Greg is asking, what are the opportunities to help develop specific course content?
To develop specific course content, as far as like utilizing VR in relation to it, or like, so with, like I said, it's kind of how we change our thinking. Like once you learn the technology and you see the apps, you know how you can integrate it into education. But there are currently people, as VR and education is growing, there are people that are creating basically kind of curriculum maps and saying, okay, you can use this VR for that. And there's some great people. So Educators in VR is a fantastic group that anybody can join. And there's the VR AR Association. That's again why I gave my Twitter, because that's where I get a lot of my information and a lot of that stuff. And you join those communities, and there's so many different resources, like, oh, I use this lesson. I did this for this lesson. And it really is a community. and everybody's kind of banding together. So I would start like kind of there, and that's what I do to make
But
sure.
also Shannon is available to walk you all through that process as well. She's available to provide professional development to be able to help and assist you in designing a lesson that's tailored for your specific needs.
Right. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do here at the Nystrand Center, is we're trying to really get people involved in VR, is that we have this amazing resource. And I come out, I teach you the technology, pretty much everything you need, and really get you going. And the community, besides myself, is educators in VR. And it's the VR Association. And then let's see.
It looks like
Twitter, so I was just gonna say my Twitter is Shannon _Putman. And we'll make sure with a follow-up that I include that in there for everybody.
And you asked, there's a question, said, what grades of students with disabilities have you worked with? And have you incorporated executive function enhancement or soft skills? Of course, the enhancement has to come from the company, but Shannon has worked at Cochrane for a number of years as a special education teacher. And so Shannon, you want to speak to that question? What grades of students with disabilities have you worked with?
Well, with students in general, we've used VR with everybody from kindergarten and up. Now, kindergarten again would be more, limited, like 10 minutes at a time. But as far as with special ed, it's actually my special ed students that sold me on VR. And I had utilized a 360 video with a student who, at the beginning of the school year, I asked the parents, what's your goal? And they're like, we just want to go out to dinner, because they had 2 kids, one had autism, one did not. And it was just too overwhelming. So their favorite restaurant was O'Charlie's. It was back when they had free pie Wednesdays, if everybody remembers that. And I went out and they were wonderful. They let me film. And so every day we practiced, and he put that headset on, and every single day we practiced. And we get longer and longer every day. It was like a minute longer. And it was all the noise, the sounds, everything, just completely overwhelming. But he was able to experience it in a safe environment, because it was the classroom. He knew it, he was safe. Then the second that it became too overwhelming, he just took that headset off and he was done. He was out of the environment. It was over. Everything was back to calm and normal. Unlike if you're in the actual restaurant, you have to try to go through the whole restaurant to get out. Also, if he had a meltdown, he got upset, started screaming, yelling, crying, whatever, it didn't matter. People weren't looking at us. You didn't have to worry about that, that judgment that comes with that. So at the end of the 6 months, he actually, they went to O'Charlie's, they made it a minute and 5 minutes. They were able to have a family dinner at the restaurant. And so that's what sold me. That was 8 years ago, and I haven't stopped since then. So yes, you can utilize it for so many different areas of special ed. And I know this presentation was more general, but special ed has always been my passion and always will be. And so you can utilize it. There's virtual speech, which helps with public speaking and all those kind of skills. There is a bunch of video modeling. We're finding that IVR is more effective for video modeling and learning skills that way. And it's funny, a lot of people would think, oh, well, my student wouldn't want to put the headset on, but they love it. And then also, again, with that access piece, the computer-based headset that I have is a Vive Pro Eye, and it utilizes eye tracking. So I've actually designed a video game that one of the ways you respond to questions is using eye tracking. So now our students that cannot use the controller because of fine motor issues or just anything in general, whether it's because of wheelchair, other things, they can now participate in the game just like everybody else. And what is also exciting about that is that all kids love eye tracking. So it's not like it's this special adaptability that we had to have that just the special ed kids need. Now everybody loves it. So they're playing the game just like everybody else.
Okay, we have another question, Shannon, and the question is from Cecilia. What is the time investment for teachers to incorporate VR in their class or their library repositories for teachers to draw upon? The time investment, again, that's one of the things that we in the Nystrand Center want to provide that opportunity, with Shannon being able to lead professional development in that area, because of course we want to make sure that teachers are comfortable, with VR, and not just come to this presentation, but allow her to be able to tailor it to their specific lesson that they're working on.
Right. And as far as learning the technology and then incorporating it, so the kids pick it up so fast. I mean, the first day we go through the tutorial and the headsets are so easy to use that pretty much by the end of the first day, the kids have learned the headset. And I found out that if you're teaching the kids, don't try to do an academic lesson the first time they use the headset, because it's not going to happen. So you just take one or two, half-hour sessions and get the kids used to the headsets and how to navigate them and things like that. And then you can pop it in anytime. So it could be like, I've used it in centers or whatever work groups we're allowed to call it now, where I have one headset in one center and each kid gets a turn, and everything else. So here's one, it's for 10 minutes here, it's over there. You can use it for motivation. You can do a 20-minute lesson. You can do an hour lesson. It fits into whatever or however you need to use it.
But
And
also, this is not just for K-12, but also for the professors in higher education. This could be a golden opportunity, again, as we look at technology different, and how do we teach our classes differently so that students can be engaged, because as Shannon indicated, that most people are screened out or zoomed out or teamed out. And so this provides an additional toolkit for you, and also provides stimulation for the professor and for the student.
And like I said, the subject matter is not a factor at all. So you can use this if you're teaching, anatomy. You can actually hold a human heart. You can see it pumping. You can see the chambers working. You can see everything opening and closing. And so the subject matter is not what you need to focus on. It's just, what do I want to do? We're only limited by our imagination when it comes to VR. And we're seeing more and more universities, like Stanford has one of the best labs in the country, MIT, they're doing some amazing work with this technology, because we saw in 2019, there's a $3.8 billion investment in VR industry. Not gaming, because it didn't hit in gaming like they thought it would, like PlayStation VR and stuff, but that's what we're fighting against, that people just see it as a game. It is so much more than that. And companies like UPS, the NFL, Tom Brady, actually, I'm a Bills fan, so I don't like it, but he utilized VR over the off season, and he'll be the first one to give a testament about what it's done for his game. So.
And then there's another question is, have any students used the headsets to take home during COVID-19?
Yes, yep. We actually, right now, the Grace James Academy, we have 10 girls have their headsets at home, as well as 2 of the teachers there, because not only are they we're working on designing different headsets, but the teachers are going to be teaching utilizing VR. And then, like I said, with Dr. Finch, we've had college students take them home. We have some of them using them right now. So what we do is we go through that sanitation process when we bring them back and everything. And so we've been fortunate that we've been able to continue using VR during COVID, and it's been a wonderful thing.
Do we have any additional questions that someone want to ask? We are available, and yes, it's 1:03, but we are available to stay on and to be able to ask, to answer or respond to any questions that you may have.
I could talk about VR forever. So, I mean, I'm here as long as you need me.
Yeah. And one of the things that Shannon stated, that you're talking about MIT and you're talking about Stanford, these are universities that's looking at VR. So we want to make sure that we're in that number. And this is a golden opportunity for the University of Louisville, but also for this community to be able to understand and utilize the technology that VR provides, and the opportunity and the reimagining instruction and education, and just the whole thing of even systems, and like you said, the fire science and the health science and different things, so many different ways that it can be utilized, even in athletics, but being able to provide those opportunities so that we can reimagine the way we think.
How are headsets available? So we use a company. I mean, it depends on, your your university or your school for the school district. We had all that red tape, but we use a distributor. And same thing for U of L. We use a distributor. The company is Bytespeed. They're fantastic. They're absolutely wonderful. You can also work with HTC Direct, but the distributor is the faster option. And then there's two big companies, and I just want to say this for anybody that's thinking about it with education. Your big VR companies right now are HTC and Oculus. And we originally started with Oculus. However, they're owned by Facebook. And so everything that goes along with Facebook is involved with Oculus, but Oculus is more for gaming. So when you're talking the fun games like Star Wars, Beat Saber, if anybody's heard of that, it's a fantastic headset for that type of a thing. But in education, we went with HTC. But I like to tell people the two companies so they can make their own decisions on what they want to use. And so the cost, it depends on what headset you're going to get. But with JCPS, we were able to put in a pretty big order. And basically, you're going to get it down to around 800, maybe a little less. And HTC is coming out with a new standalone headset anytime now. So that might drop the price even more, which would be exciting. And I think I just saw a comment from Karen, who she's unbelievable, where she said, don't be fooled by the price of the headset, because you could get an Oculus Quest for $200 and you're like, oh, well, why would I buy one for 800 when I can get one for 200? That's
But
because it does.
But the whole bottom line is for you all to know that that the Nystrand Center in Shannon can be your gatekeeper, can be your go-to when you're thinking about immersive virtual reality, that we can be able to walk you through the steps and provide the professional development necessary to allow you to get there, rather than you going out there trying to figure it all out, that we will provide that opportunity for you all.
So about 800. That's why Engage is a nice option. And there's some other WebXR out there as well. So I can give you all those, which is fun. Because I like to say I like to jerry rig. I'm really good at jerry rigging. I'm really good at getting the most bang for your buck, because I get it. So I like to consider myself a virtual couponer, I guess. So I can make it work. Whatever your situation is, we can make it work.
Hey Shannon, I had a question for you.
Sure.
When you mentioned that story with John Finch and the young student, and you said that, I think you said someone presented like a lion cub. Did they have to like program that themselves, or was that something that came with the program itself? That's
a fantastic question. So with with HTC, we actually found that 3D asset and we just loaded it into our account. But with Engage, they have over 10,000 assets already in there. So like chickens, whales, all other different kinds of things. So, but we also have the ability to add our own. So again, that gives you that great option of, especially in high schools, in college, you have those students that are good at programming, Unity, Blender, those kind of things. It gives them an option to make things if you want. And you can do that, but you also don't have to do that to be able to use it. You don't have to have any programming skills whatsoever to utilize anything that I showed you today.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yep.
And we have a question. Have you or are you collecting data on academic outcome results for students who have used VR?
Yes, so I have a lot of data, and I'd be happy to share it at any time with anybody. I didn't put it in this just because I know, it's not as wowing on all different fronts. But yeah, we have a ton of data that we've gotten from Cochrane. I actually have an article published in Educational Leadership, which is a pretty good peer-reviewed academic journal. And also my dissertation is collecting a lot of data with the John Lewis experience that I'll be sharing. So yes, I do have a lot of data, and I'm not false selling it. Some things it was more effective Other times it wasn't. It's not this magic end all, cure all, be all. But I'm telling you right now, more often than not, it's been incredibly positive. Uh, but that's also kind of the fun in the trial and error, you know? I mean, when a new app comes out, I'm like, oh, sorry, can't do my homework, gotta go try out this new app. So we're finding that the adults who are, especially like myself, who grew up on like Mario Brothers and stuff, are actually really getting into it. And they're like, no, I didn't have my students on it because I was using it. So I didn't even get into the fitness aspect of it. It gets our kids up and out of their chairs. I did take data on heart rate and calories burned utilizing VR compared to otherwise, because, you know, with temperature and things like that and weather, not being able to go outside for recess. I mean, there's a boxing game that is a workout and a half. So you bring in fitness. I didn't even touch on that. That's a whole nother area that you can go in, which I'd be happy to teach anybody.
And I see a comment from Karen that indicates it's important that students begin to teach, to learn skills like 3D modeling and animation jobs, because for jobs of the future. And again, that's where we are. We have to think futuristically. We can't, we have to think about the jobs and situations and what's happening in the future, not the now, but the forward thinking that's happening. And VR is going to be the wave of the future, is the wave. And again, we have two prominent universities that have truly invested in it. And so we're looking at being that next university that goes, you know, full swing into VR and providing this opportunity and this information to our community.
Further ahead because we've been doing it longer. They just got the financial backing to be able to do more right now. But I did see a question about anxiety, or I believe acquired brain injury. I did use it with my students with anxiety as far as with emotional and behavior disorders. And I didn't, not any specific brain injury that I knew of. I didn't have that experience, but now also too, with having the Vive Pro, I'm hoping to try to do some more neurological, if we can get some cross-disciplinary work here at U of L, maybe to do some more brain science for sure. Because there's a study that showed that watching the 360 video and real life experience, the brain did not recognize it as any different. So that's exciting, and I'd like to continue that work too. And we have the equipment here at U of L. That's what's really exciting, that I think a lot of people, especially at U of L, if they're still on here, might not understand. We have it. Like, we have me as the knowledge, we have the equipment, so we're ready to go. Like, we just need some more opportunities and some more, you know, things, and we're here. Nystrand Center is ready.
And that's why another opportunity, another reason why we're having this forum today is to let you know that we are here and we're available, and we want to be the hub for the work that's being done in VR.
And I saw there's from UCF, yes, they would love to collaborate. That would be fantastic. We would love that. I forgot, UCF is also unbelievable in the virtual reality and work that's being done. UCF is amazing. My husband is an alumnus from there too. So I went to the University of Tampa, but no, that would be fantastic. I would love to talk. Yes, go Knights. He's wearing a shirt today, actually, when I left the house. So.
Shannon, can I just take a minute here to make a plug for your February 18th noon presentation? We're going to be having one offered through the Office of Innovation and Strategic Partnerships, where Shannon is going to be specifically talking about VR use in for faculty in the College of Education and Human Development, looking at research opportunities to incorporate it and not just our education and teaching, but also in the sports administration, sports science, special education needs, so organizational leadership needs. So we're going to specifically target the needs of our faculty. So we're really excited to have Shannon do a specific presentation on February 18th at noon. And anyone interested can text me at cecilia.pareto@louisville.edu, and I will put that in the chat. Thanks.
And we will also have information regarding that, so you'll be able to register for that session as well.
kind of the goal is that this was the generalized presentation, and then hopefully somebody that saw this would be like, this is my area, I want more information on this specific thing, and we can present and kind of talk about that in a greater focused detail. And if there's any athletics, I got a huge opportunity for football, so.
So any other questions, any other comments, any other announcements?
I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming and listening to me and hearing my stories and just spending the time with us, because like I said, I'm passionate about it, that this is what I love, it's what I'm doing. And, you know, now that Dr. Stark and everybody else here at the Nystrand Center in U of L and Dr. Finch brought me over here, has been so supportive. You know, there's nothing we can't do. So, I mean, we're not stopping. You're going to keep hearing about us. So I hope you join us.